Welcome back after the break. You're watching Indus News, and I'm Fiza Jamal bringing you our main stories in detail. We start with Russia, which has asked the U.S. to withdraw nuclear weapons deployed outside its territory. A document accidentally published by a NATO-affiliated body revealed 6 European states house American weapons. The now deleted document says U.S. nuclear weapons are being stored in Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey. Russia's permanent representative in Vienna, Mikhail Ulyanov, says Moscow places its nuclear weapons exclusively on its own territory. The American director of the Arms Control Association, Kingston Reef, says the presence of U.S. nuclear weapons in Europe is not a surprise. Reef says it has long been a fairly open secret. And in a related development, NATO has warned Russia of consequences if it does not return to complying with the INF Treaty by August the 2nd. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said time is running out to save the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. The US and the Soviet Union signed the agreement in 1987 to ban short and medium-range missiles. Stoltenberg said Russia's decision to develop new weapons are a clear violation of the arms accord. The U.S. announced it would suspend its obligations under the treaty in February, accusing Russia of breaching its terms. Russia, however, denies the allegations but suspended its part in the treaty last month after presenting proof the U.S. was working on long-range missiles. Moving on, Turkey has asked the U.S. to reverse its decision to stop F-35 fighter jet sales to Ankara. Its foreign ministry says the illegitimate move can harm strategic ties between the two NATO allies. The ministry asked the U.S. to honor its friendship with Turkey with actions instead of rhetoric. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump said he will stop sales of the advanced warplanes to Ankara over its purchase of the Russian S-400 missile. Trump said Turkey can't have both American and Russian equipment. Ankara began receiving the missile defense system last week, despite U.S. warnings. In the U.S. Congress, lawmakers have approved 3 resolutions blocking President Donald Trump's planned sale of weapons to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. 2 of the resolutions were passed with 238 votes, while a third was approved with 237. Trump, who sought good relations with Riyadh, has pledged to veto the move. Overturning a presidential veto requires a 2/3 majority in both the House and Senate. Trump had announced plans to sell missiles and other weapons worth $8 billion to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Jordan. War of words between Washington and Tehran continues, and Tehran has accused the United States of economic terrorism against Iranians by using harsh sanctions. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Iran has made progress in the empowerment and equality of people despite unlawful embargoes. Zarif said U.S. travel restrictions on Iranian diplomats and their families living in New York are inhumane. Speaking at the UN, Zarif said the sanctions can restrict Tehran's ability to achieve sustainable development goals.
The unlawful extraterritorial economic sanctions imposed on Iran by the United States in violation of Security Council Resolution 2231 represent the greatest threat to the achievement of sustainable development goals of Iran.
Well, tensions between Iran and the U.S. increased after Washington's unilateral withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear accord. And we move on to Syria, where rebel coalition claims Moscow has deployed special ground forces in the country's northwest to seize opposition strongholds. In an interview, they said no Russian ground forces had fought alongside the government on the front line until now. The coalition claims the deployment came only after Syrian troops were unable to make any significant headway. Government forces regained the Humaimat hilltop from rebels last week after the intervention and successful advance of Allied troops. War monitors say government forces have captured over 70 houses in Kyoto, a town in southwestern Syria. The UN, on the other hand, says over 300,000 civilians fled the battle after dozens of villages and towns came under attack. And now we talk about Ukraine, which has confirmed its commitment to an indefinite ceasefire in Donbass starting from July the 21st. The eastern Donbass border region has been scarred with cross-border fighting with Russia and is seen as a flashpoint that could trigger war. The ceasefire has been approved by the Trilateral Contact Group, brokering peace for East Ukraine. Government spokesperson Daria Oliver said the contact group has confirmed the implementation of the Minsk agreements. Oliver said the sides have pledged to provide secure access of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission. Earlier, OSCE Special Representative Martin Sajdik said the contact group had negotiated the terms of an indefinite ceasefire. Moving on, Canadian and EU leaders are negotiating to expand their comprehensive economic and trade agreement. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and EU Council President Donald Tusk said they will strengthen their bilateral relationship. More in this report.
Canadian and EU leaders are negotiating to expand their comprehensive economic and trade agreement. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and EU Council President Donald Tusk said they will strengthen their bilateral relationship. In a meeting with Trudeau on the sidelines of the Canada-EU summit, Tusk called Ottawa the EU's closest transatlantic partner. Canada's Prime Minister said its cooperation with Brussels is an example for the world.
President Tusk has been a good friend, a strong ally, and an extraordinarily powerful representative for Europeans who believe that working together and achieving great things only happens if we stay open and confident.
The trade pact between Europe and Canada went into effect in mid-2017 and has so far been ratified by 13 of the 28 EU states. The CETA removes tariffs on nearly all goods and services between Canada and Europe. Since the accord was signed, EU exports to Canada have risen 15%.
U.S. lawmakers have killed a resolution to impeach President Donald Trump over his racist remarks against 4 congresswomen. A majority of Democrats voted with Republicans to set aside the move, which was brought by Democrat Al Green. The resolution calling for an impeachment inquiry for Trump said the president is unfit to rule the country.
In all of this, the aforementioned Donald John Trump has, by his statements, brought the high office of the President of the United States in contempt, ridicule, disgrace, and disrepute, has sown seeds of discord among the people of the United States.
In a tweet, Trump said the impeachment issue is now over. He continued calling efforts to impeach him ridiculous. Moving on, South America's Mercosur bloc has met in Argentina to fast-track the trade deal it signed with the EU. The presidents of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay convened in Santa Fe less than a month after the agreement. Brazil assumed presidency of the trade bloc from Argentina during the meeting. Members and the EU agreed to eliminate nearly all tariffs on two-way trade. The arrangement marks a rare win for free trade amid rising global protectionism. However, it still needs to be ratified by the multiple national parliaments involved. And now we talk about Japan, where 13 people have been killed in a suspected arson attack at an animation studio in Kyoto. The local fire department says 35 people were injured, with 10 sustaining life-threatening injuries. Police have arrested a 41-year-old man who they believe poured gasoline in different areas of the building. He was also injured in the fire and has been taken to the hospital. In Afghanistan, an Afghan colonel has been killed in an insider attack. The Defense Ministry says an Afghan soldier killed Colonel Mateen Mujtaba during a security assessment in Karabakh district. The ministry says Mateen was attacked by an enemy soldier who infiltrated Afghan military ranks. The assailant was killed in retaliatory fire. The Taliban have claimed responsibility, saying U.S. soldiers also died in the attack. But the NATO-led mission says no U.S. or coalition troops were killed or wounded. Earlier, Taliban had killed 18 Afghan soldiers in clashes in western Badghis province. The World Health Organization says the battle for Libya's capital has killed over 1,000 people and injured 50,000 others. In a statement, the UN said the fight for Tripoli has displaced over 120,000 people. The country fell into crisis after Eastern forces loyal to Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive on Tripoli in early April this year. In addition to the capital, the war has also destroyed entire neighborhoods in places such as Benghazi. And the World Health Organization has also declared a public health emergency over the Ebola outbreak in Democratic Republic of Congo. It is considered a rare declaration used for the gravest epidemics. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says he has accepted the advice of his advisory board to invoke the emergency provision. He says it is time for the world to take notice of the epidemic. The International Federation of Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies have welcomed the decision. The Red Cross says hopefully it will garner world attention to this crisis. Over 1,600 people have died from Ebola since last August. Now we'll take a short break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back after the break. We'll move on with our stories now. Iceland is trying to bring back trees cut down by the Vikings who colonized it. The country is believed to be the least forested in entire Europe, but now the government is increasing its efforts to increase forest cover. Details here.
Europe faced an intense heat wave triggered by climate change this year, with temperatures soaring to 40 degrees Celsius. This has turned many global warming skeptics into believers. Many countries, including Iceland, are rigorously fighting the threat. The country has planted nearly 3 million trees since 2015.
This is one of the worst examples of soil erosion in Iceland, on lowland. Hafnarsandur it's called. And here we are planning a project, afforestation project, to stabilize the soil and protect the town nearby.
The lack of trees has caused soil erosion and desertification. Instead of growing native birch trees, Iceland is more focused on planting foreign species, including pines, using a Finnish-designed tube-shaped tool.
The pine and spruce, that's also from Icelandic seeds. Original, they come from Alaska. But now we have 30, 40, 50-year-old trees giving us seeds.
Harsh climate in Iceland is a big obstacle to recover forest cover, but the government has made afforestation one of its top priorities.
In the United States, a resurgent seal population in Cape Cod is attracting great white sharks to the popular tourist destination. There has already been one fatal shark attack in the peninsula last year. Authorities have stepped up emergency response efforts in an attempt to prevent more tragedies. More in this report.
Last September, Massachusetts saw its first shark-related death in 83 years. A rising seal population is attracting great white sharks to the Cape Cod Peninsula in droves. The Atlantic White Shark Conservancy reports 100 sightings this summer alone. Authorities are trying to control the problem by enhancing their emergency responses. beach authorities have been equipped with specialized medical kits to cope with potential attacks.
I know there's a task force that's looking at different options. I'm interested to see what they come up with. I do think there's not anything that's going to be 100% a deterrent, but I'd like to see what an examination of all the options looks like to see if there is something that can be done that can make it safer out there.
Surfing is such a big part of Cape Cod's culture that most people have not changed their beach-going habits. Some have opted to use electronic shark repellent devices. Regardless, presence of one of the ocean's top apex predators in large numbers presents a very real danger.
A family in Cuba makes musical instruments from antique furniture found in demolition sites or in the rubbish. These instruments are then sold on to schools. This report has more.
Recently, Cuba has introduced traditional music courses to its syllabus, but the country doesn't have the resources to produce musical instruments on its own. So, in an unprecedented move, the government has made an agreement with the Guayabo luthiers.
Up until now, we have made some 550 instruments. Our instruments are in every school in the country.
It's difficult for private artisans to purchase wood suitable for the musical instruments. But the Guayabo artisans have found a way around this obstacle. They make instruments using raw materials. The instruments are made in the courtyard of the family's house on the outskirts of Havana.
The luthiers in the world are virtually all solitary wolves working on their own. In our case, it's part of family inheritance, like it usually is around the world. But we have become a group within the family who are dedicated to making musical instruments. These musical instruments reach schools through a socio-cultural project.
Everywhere around the world, luthiers are solitary workers, but in Cuba, it's a family business.
And now let's take you to the world of business, where global stocks have stumbled. Asian stock markets have fallen amid renewed tensions on the US-China trade front. Mainland Chinese shares and Japan's Nikkei indices slipped significantly. Japan's exports have dropped 6.7% in June, down on expectations. Australia's ASX 200, South Korea's Kospi and the Hong Kong Hang Seng also traded lower. European markets have also fallen, with tech stocks tumbling more than 2%. Meanwhile, Australian jobs data showed the country produced a net 500 jobs in June, clearly missing predictions. Oil prices rose in Asian trading. Gold prices have surged while oil traded flat in Asian trading after the IMF said the US dollar was overvalued by 6 to 12%. In the world of sports, we'll begin with the Africa Cup. Nigeria have defeated Tunisia by 1-0 in the third-place playoff at the Africa Cup of Nations. Playing in Cairo's Al Salam Stadium, striker Odion Ighalo scored the only goal in the 3rd minute of the match. Tunisia established a foothold in the game, but the Eagles of Carthage failed to capitalize on the many goal-scoring chances they created. With this victory, Nigeria has finished 3rd for the 8th time in the tournament's history. Meanwhile, Senegal and Algeria will face each other in Friday's final. At the International Champions Cup, English Premier League club Arsenal have defeated Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich by 2-1. Striker Eddie Nishkaya scored the Gunners' 88th minute winner. After a goalless first half, an own goal from Bayern's defender Louis Poznanski gave Arsenal the lead. That was cancelled out after a header from star striker Robert Lewandowski found the net. Nishkaya's strike proved the decider for the Gunners. Arsenal play their next match against Fiorentina on Saturday. Costa Rica's Hanna Gabriels has defended her title as the WBA 154-pound category champion. She defeated Argentina's Abril Vidal in a title fight in San Jose. The Costa Rican fighter dominated the Argentine from the opening round. Gabriels floored Vidal in the third round with a fierce left hook, winning by a knockout. This is the first defeat of Vidal's professional career, while Gabriels has improved her record to 20 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw with 11 knockouts. Pro wrestler Noor Diana, better known by her stage name Phoenix, cuts an unusual figure in the ring. What sets her apart is her small frame and the fact that she wears a veil. The 19-year-old wrestler has become a social media sensation, prompting other women to develop an interest in the sport. More in this report. Noor Phoenix Diana is only 155 centimeters tall and weighs 43 kilograms, yet her agility makes her a match for opponents of all sizes. She may be a hijab-wearing Muslim, but won't let stereotypes stop her from following her passion.
Since the beginning, it's always hard for me because, I get a lot of people say that I can't wrestle because I'm a Muslim and wear hijab.
Diana takes part in the Malaysia Pro Wrestling Federation. In early July, Diana defeated 4 men to be crowned Malaysia's.
I push her exactly like how I push the guys. Like if I ask the guys to do 50 push-ups, she needs to do 50 push-ups. No exclusions or anything. And like any way I would strike the guys, the same way I would strike her. There's no difference in treatment when it comes to training.
In early July, Diana defeated 4 men to be crowned Malaysia's wrestling champion. Professional wrestling is a relatively small sport in Malaysia. With thousands of followers on social media, Diana is helping boost its popularity. She is one of just 2 women wrestlers in the whole country. Now let's take a quick look at what the weather is looking like today around the globe. These are all the main stories in detail we have for you this hour. You can follow us online for all of these updates. Just find us by the name indus.news.